So once again, thanks a lot for the invitation. We're talking about Lachit Barphukan and his battle against the Mughals. So Lachit Barphukan was a contemporary of Chhatrapati Shivaji, and he fought against the Mughals in 1660s in Assam. So essentially, what we see is that Assam has a very glorious history of defeating Mughal invasions, right from the Mughal and other Turkish and Afghan invasions, right from the year 1206 AD. So this was the year in which Bakhtiyar Khilji invaded Bengal, and after invading Bengal, he turned towards Assam, but in the same year he got defeated. And likewise, right from 1206 up to the year 1669, for about 400 years, we have the Ahom dynasty of Assam, which repeatedly faced invasions from the west, and they were able to beat back these invasions time after time again. So what this shows is that they had a very robust system in place. They had a very strong dynasty, that is the Ahom dynasty in place, which defeated many of these invasions. And plus they had some systems in place, that is the military and the economic systems, which enabled large amount of forces to be raised at the same time to be able to fight these battles. So you can see that a lot of popular names of Indian history are there in this list. Towards the 17th century, in the year around 1615, we had even the Mughals trying to invade Assam. Now, one of the reasons why Assam was such a coveted place for invading, about 17 to 18 times they had faced invasions and they managed to beat the invasions every time. So, first of all, the soil of the Brahmaputra was very rich and very much sought after in other provinces. Plus, the Assam route also opened up possibilities of invasion in Arakan, that is today's Burma, which was for some time some part of the Mughal armies had managed to reach that place. So Assam was another route to reach that place. Plus, some of them were dreaming of going up to Tibet and those places via Assam. So that is why you find that repeatedly, about 17 or 18 times, they have tried to invade Assam, but each time got defeated. Now, Jahangir invaded 1615, after him Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. It was in the invasion of Aurangzeb of 1661 AD, where actually Mir Jumla and Diler Khan, his two generals, invaded Assam. At this point of time, Assam was facing a crisis where they had their commanders fighting each other. They were not happy over some appointments made in the army. And taking advantage of this situation, Mir Jumla and Diler Khan invaded. Diler Khan obviously is popular in Maharashtra as the person who encircled the fort of Purandar, and he was also later on sent to fight against the Pashtun tribes of the frontier. So he was actually one of the most popular and powerful Mughal generals that was working under Aurangzeb. Plus, Mir Jumla initially worked with Golconda and was around 65 to 70 years old when this invasion of Assam took place. He invaded Assam and managed to win this war against the Assamese. A treaty was signed. You can see that this is where the Ahom kingdom was at one corner, and the Mughal Empire stretched all the way from the Hindu Kush. So, Mir Jumla signed a treaty of Giljari Ghat, where broadly the daughter of the Assamese king was given to the Mughals, to the Mughal harem. They had to cede a lot of land. This meant that land and soil went to the Mughals, and of course the payments were made in terms of gold and elephants towards the Mughals. Then the Mughals would obviously put a Faujdar at Guwahati who would oversee all these new conquests. But above all, there was this term where the daughter of the king for Jayadwat Singha, the Assamese king Jayadwat Singha, had to be sent to the Mughal harem And this girl was only 6 years old when this event happened. So now obviously the onus was on the Assamese to drive out these Mughals. They had now conquered, we look at this map here, the Mughal territory is extended from somewhere around Rangmati, which is towards the left of the screen, to just beyond Guwahati, which I have marked in the red rectangle. So this was the part that had been annexed by the Mughals. The remaining part of Assam, they had let it be as it is with the Ahoms. Towards the right of the screen, you can see a place called Gadgaon marked with a red rectangle. So this place served as the capital of the Ahoms in those times. The modern day capital is near Guwahati, called Dispur, but in those times the capital was much more inland at Gadgaon. So it came to a situation in 1661 where the Mughals invaded and the Assamese had lost a lot of territories. And now obviously the onus came on the Assamese to fight back against the Mughals. There were some people in the court who wanted to immediately open hostilities against the Mughals. But at this point of time, their prime minister called Atan Buragohen, he said that there is no point in trying to immediately go and capture Guwahati because they obviously had a broken army, they had a defeated army with them. And whereas one Assamese army could evict the Mughal Faujdar at Guwahati, it is obvious that Aurangzeb will again try and conquer these parts of the country, which would be even worse invasion than the one under Diler Khan and Mir Jumla. And if the Assamese are not able to withstand this second onslaught, then there is no point in trying to capture Guwahati first up. He tried to give some examples, such as a boat which is being rowed by three persons. If all three of them are in one direction, then obviously the boat will move faster. And by and by, the Assamese king understood that the best policy was to wait and build their own army, and likewise build alliances with other tribes around Gadgaon, such as from the Naga Hills or from Garo and Khasi Hills, or even towards the north of the Brahmaputra River. So for 4 years it did this, and Lachit Borphukan was eventually chosen to lead these armies in 1667. So Lachit Borphukan at that point of time served as the head of the bodyguards of the king. He was the son of a person named Momai Tamuli Barbarua, and from a very young age actually had some kind of knowledge and experience of how the court worked, how the armies worked. He was in fact involved in some kind of fighting against Mir Jumla also in that previous invasion. So after much deliberation, the Assamese king, the Ahom king, Chakradhar Singha decided that Lachit Borphukan should lead these armies. And in 1667, these armies were sent to Guwahati. And just like you find the Marathas using guerrilla warfare in Maharashtra against the hill forts which were captured by Mughals and which belonged to Adil Shah, you find that the Assamese also indulged in guerrilla warfare against the Mughals. So in fact, their name for this was Daga Yuddha. And I think it's a quite an apt name that Daga Yuddha, that is war by treachery, was the Assamese term for this warfare. So they tried to capture Guwahati the usual way, but that was not possible. So one night what happened was that they sent some soldiers up the walls and embankments, such as these, and they managed to pour water into the guns of the Mughals. The result being that the next day, when the Mughals tried to fire their cannons at the Assamese army, it was totally impossible to do so. And the Ahom army was able to score a very easy victory against the Mughals and evict the Mughal Faujdar. Now, once that had been done, there obviously jubilation was there in the camp, in the Ahom camp, that the Mughals had been evicted from Guwahati. But at the same time, they were on their toes. They understood that Aurangzeb will not take kindly to this kind of defeat. Remember, it had been 400 years of trying, after which Aurangzeb had managed to finally get some kind of success in Assam. So this was a conquest that he was not going to let go so easily. So in that direction, he raised an army and he sent Ram Singh, that is Mirza Raja Jai Singh's son, towards Assam as soon as he found about this debacle in 1668. This was roughly the same time that the episode with Chhatrapati Shivaji and the escape from Agra was taking place. And there is one theory, one suggestion or concept, that Ram Singh was in fact sent towards Assam by Aurangzeb with a two-pointed strategy. Is that one, he had to prove himself to Aurangzeb, plus he had sent an able warrior for this task. Now on the Assamese side, Lachit Borphukan was of course wary of this, that the Mughals would attack again with a much larger force. What they had defeated was just a Faujdar at Guwahati. And so Lachit Borphukan and the king Chakrajit Singh and Ratan Duragohe now decided what is going to be the course of action over the next few months. A lot of them wanted Gargaon, the capital, to become a very strong citadel, a very strong fort, which would then guard against this Mughal invasion. But Lachit said that Gargaon is our capital, and as it is quite a lot inside our own territories. If we allow the Mughals to move right up to Gargaon, then we don't have anything else to fall back upon. In case we are defeated fighting at Gargaon, then the Mughals, if they manage to win, we will have no place to go to, because that is more or less the limit of our kingdom. Let us instead go to Guwahati, where the river narrows into its narrowest. In fact, the river is narrowest about 1 mile across at the city of Guwahati. By doing so, we achieve two things. One is that we are there at a very narrow point of the river, thus helping our armies. And secondly, by chance Guwahati fails, we are not able to hold our armies at Guwahati and the Mughals actually manage to advance, then we have a second fallback option, that of the capital of Gargaon. Obviously, one problem was with Guwahati is that it was not fortified or defended as much as it should be in case of invasion was to be mounted. So now began a fort construction or embankment building activity which lasted almost the whole of 1668. Lachit Borphukan's plan was that he will build a series of defenses, a series of embankments like the one you see here, which is at Lachitgarh High School near Guwahati. Is that a series of these embankments will be built all around the city, such that the entire city is surrounded by a wall from all sides, and the banks of the river Brahmaputra are covered by a sort of wall, which the Mughals will find it very difficult to breach in case they are to enter the city. Then of course he posted soldiers on these embankments, thus making them not only fortifications but also kind of guard towers from which they could fire on the Mughal boats. An interesting anecdote takes place during the building of these walls. One night, in fact a very late evening, Lachit Borphukan was taking one of his rounds, trying to see what the progress of the work is, and he came to a place where his own maternal uncle was building one of these gadis or embankments, and he found that the work was almost entirely incomplete. And obviously Lachit got very angry and he said that these Mughals are going to attack within a few days. We cannot have this place unguarded like this. In this entire chain, even if one single portion is not complete, then the Mughals are going to enter from that place, and this whole work and whole effort of building fortifications around Guwahati will fail. And giving this kind of warning to his maternal uncle who was in charge of the work over there, Lachit Borphukan went away. Next morning he came back and he found that nothing had changed. His uncle had taken rest, asked his workers to go away, and the embankment had been left unfinished. Now Lachit Borphukan called his own maternal uncle to him, asked him why this is the situation, and he in fact ordered his uncle to be beheaded on that spot. So this is the kind of dedication Lachit Borphukan had towards his work and towards his country, in that where even his own maternal uncle was involved, he did not shy away from beheading him for dereliction of duty. So we find that Lachit Borphukan had a very strict sense of duty and a strict sense of patriotism. Another case happened during this time is that he sent two emissaries or two messengers to Ram Singh carrying some message regarding negotiations and talks which were going on during the course of the war. And these two messengers reached Ram Singh's tent. They found that Ram Singh was not inside, and they were waiting for him. And they saw that there were two wooden birds which are covered in jewels, rubies, diamonds, and very beautiful looking birds were kept on a table. So these two messengers got very much excited or interested in those birds. And at that point of time, Ram Singh entered his tent and asked them whether they want any of these birds as a gift. So one of them refused, but the other messenger said that yes, we don't have anything like this in Assam. So I would be very happy if you can give me one of these birds. So Ram Singh smiled at him, and he smiled, and instead of giving him one bird, he gave him two of those toy wooden birds which were bedecked in jewels. When Lachit Borphukan found out that his messengers who had been sent with a letter to be given to Ram Singh and had come back actually with a couple of gifts, he called those messengers to him, and the one who had taken those gifts was put in iron fetters and sent to jail. Because in Lachit Borphukan's eyes, this was a kind of treachery in which he had given a very simple job of delivering a letter to a person who was entirely in the enemy camp. They were actually fighting against the Mughals, and this was just a talk that took place in between battles. The Mughals were not a party to be going to and taking gifts from, and so in the eyes of Lachit Borphukan, this became a point of treachery about which he was quite angry, and hence he sent the envoy named Ramcharan to jail. So such similarly events kept happening between the years 1669 to 1670, where various battles were fought on the river Brahmaputra, which you have seen earlier. And even though the Assamese faced a reverse at Alaboi, more or less they were managing to hold their fort, but at the same time Mughal numbers were very large, and Ram Singh did not budge from his position. In fact, he scored a victory at Alaboi against the Ahoms, which is again near Guwahati. And Aurangzeb was so pleased with this new victory that he promoted Ram Singh to a Mansabdari of 5,000, and he sent more troops from Agra to Assam. He also requested Shaista Khan to send boats and ships into the Brahmaputra. And Shaista Khan responded by sending 40 warboats, each having 16 guns. Now we find that the Mughals sent 40 warboats having 16 guns each into the Brahmaputra from Bengal, and the Assamese at the same time had a very large number of very small boats. So in March 1671, after 2 years of fighting, we find that the Mughals and the Assamese faced off in a unique battle known as the Battle of Saraighat, which took place in this triangle between the Ashwakranta hill on northern side, the Itakuri hill to the east, and the Nilachal hill to the west. So this triangle is exactly next to Guwahati of today. It is the point where the river Brahmaputra is at its narrowest. Today, we can define this point as the Kamakhya temple, which is at Nilachal Hill. The Itakhuli Hill is a place where we have the temple, and we have the Deputy Commissioner of Bungalow also on this Itakhuli Hill. This Itakhuli Hill you can see just at the right hand side tip of the blue triangle on your screen. This was also the place where the Mughal Faujdar or Guwahati had stayed, and Lachit Borphukan had captured this very fortification during his invasion of 1667. So you find that the Mughals under Ram Singh had decided to mount a very large invasion and finally try to break through the embankments that Lachit Borphukan had put all around the city of Guwahati. You can see again here a space called Andurwali Sandbank. It had been reported to Ram Singh that this Andurwali Sandbank had a small weakness, had a small weak point where the fortifications were not as strong as other places. So maybe they could try and effect a breach over here. And Ram Singh was also now keen to try and make a progress in this war, because his usual tactics of trying to draw the Assamese onto the plains and onto the flat land had failed. The Mughals were now trying to push through their 40 vessels, all of them with 16 huge guns, into this narrow passage, which was just 1 mile wide. Now again, to come back to why did Lachit Borphukan choose Guwahati as a point for fighting against the Mughals? Now this was a point where the river narrowed down the most. The narrowing of the river created certain problems or certain conditions which were not usually seen on a land-based battle. The Battle of Saraighat took place entirely on the river. It took place on the river Brahmaputra. And we find here that there were certain challenges posed by the water itself, which will not be finding on any kind of land-based battle. First of all, what happened is that the river narrowed down from about 5 miles wide, 4 miles wide, to about just around a mile wide at Guwahati. The basic physics will tell you that when water tries to pass from a wide area into a narrow area, its speed increases. So the first problem the boats are going to face is that they would have an increase of speed coming from the from the east to the west. So the Ahom boats, which are going from east to west, were going to have a push with them of around 5 to 8 kilometers per hour. So this again worked in two ways. One was that they would get more speed, but at the same time, this speed would make their controllability a little more difficult. At the same time, the Mughals were coming in from the west, and as they would go through this narrow area, they will find that they are going to face resistance. And while they would have better maneuverability, they would find that their speed is automatically slowed down. So this was one main advantage that Lachit Borphukan accrued out of taking Guwahati as a point to make a stand against the Mughals. The problem of maneuverability which had come across because of the increased speed, he overcame by employing smaller boats against the Mughals. While the Mughals were carrying ships that were huge in terms of the Assamese boats, so around 50 or 60 meter long boats, and each carrying about 16 cannons. The Assamese war boats were only about 3 meters wide, about 8 meters long. So this 8 meter wide boat, while it had the advantage of speed, by being small, they could also maneuver it in those narrow confines of the 1 meter or 1 mile wide river. The increase of the water speed also created other problems. One was that there was a drop in the pressure, and this caused the boats to sink a bit more. Although on the Ahom side, given the size of the boats, I doubt the sinkage would be much, but given the much larger 50 or 60 meter long Mughal boats, they would definitely have an appreciable sinkage on account of this water speed. The third problem which came about, again as a result of the moving water, is a phenomenon known as interaction. So this happens when two ships or two boats are moving at high speeds next to each other. This kind of creates a pressure difference which causes one ship to move towards the other ship. And in fact, in cases where the larger ship and smaller ships are involved, this can in fact make the smaller ship veer towards the larger ones. So this phenomenal interaction which makes the small boat veer towards the large one could well have been possible in this battle, where you had a 50-meter long Mughal boat trying to fight against a 6 or 7-meter long Ahom boat. And we know that the Battle of Saraighat, in the initial stages, Lachit Borphukan did not take a part. He was very ill, he was running a very high fever, and he found that in his absence, the Ahom boats are getting hammered by these 40 or 50 Mughal warships, and they are beating a retreat towards Gargaon. And then it is recorded that Lachit Borphukan, in his state where he was running a high fever, he came down to his own boat, he unfurled the Ahom flag, and all of them were then inspired to fight once more against the Mughals. And under the leadership of Lachit Borphukan, he managed to maneuver those boats, the small boats, against the Mughal armies and win. So it is quite possible that Lachit Borphukan knew about the way these boats behaved on the water and was able to maneuver them effectively. You will find that this naval battle, this riverine battle, which took place, had components to it which were very unique. Not only was the narrow space used efficiently, but the embankments had guards on them. So we also had a situation where if the Mughals tried to land themselves on the banks, they would get shot at or attacked by arrows from these banks. Now again, when we come to the Assamese boats, I mentioned that the Assamese boats were small, about 7 meters. And because these boats were small, 7 meter wide, and because these boats are small, obviously the cannons they had to place on them were also small in size. Whereas the Mughals were carrying 16 cannons on a 50-meter long ship. So the small Assamese boat carried small cannons. We had obviously the second problem is that you cannot load the boat beyond a point, because after a point the weight will be too much for it to bear and the boat will start sinking. So they used these cannons, which were very small, and they were able to attack the much larger boats of the Mughals. Again, we come back to the same problem, is that it was of range, where the smaller boat had to move closer to the larger boat to fire, where again we had the problem of the moving river below them, where the movement of the river created problems for the smaller boats. And here it is the navigation skills and the maneuverability skills of the Ahoms to be able to manage those boats properly and fire at the Mughals. So when we talk about the Ahom army or the Ahom riverine navy, we've spoken about how they employed a large number of boats on the river. So obviously, if there had to be a large number of boats, there had to be a dockyard somewhere to repair those boats, to make those boats, to take them in, put them out to the river again. And you find that two such dockyards are situated right inside the city of Guwahati today. One is Digali Pukuri, which you see to the left of your screen. It is near the museum. And the other is Doi Pukuri, which is again about a few kilometers off the first tank. So again in this diagram, I marked Digali Pukuri, which was a large tank And initially, in the time of Lachit Borphukan, this tank was larger, plus there was a canal that led directly from the tank to the river Brahmaputra, which you see towards the north. You can see two black lines have been marked as the canal. Today, the Guwahati High Court building is standing on those lines. There was a canal in the medieval ages which led from the tank to the river. Over a period of time, they stopped getting used, and eventually the British filled up this canal. They made Digali Fukuri into a separate pond or tank, and the Guwahati High Court building was built over the canal. But during the days of Lachit Borphukan, we find that boats would come up this canal into this tank called Digali Fukuri, and then they get repaired or they get refitted, and then again sent back into this canal to reach the river and continue fighting. So the Assamese had an entire infrastructure ready to fight their battles on the river. It's a very unique situation. You find that most of the armies in India had an artillery arm, a cavalry arm, there may be an infantry. Rare cases, there was a naval arm in place, such as Chhatrapati Shivaji and some other kings to the south. But Assam is the only place you find that there was a working river navy, where the entire navy of the Ahom kingdom was based on the river Brahmaputra. It never reached the sea except for trade. But they had the infrastructure, they had built ports, they had built dockyards, they had built refitting centers at places such as Guwahati and other places all around the Brahmaputra. And this was their strong point. It is to Lachit Borphukan's advantage, or in fact to his intelligence, that he managed to trap the Mughals in exact this place where his point was the strongest. So again, coming back to Digali Fukari and the river navy, you find that the Assamese also had devised certain tactics such as a Panigad, where they would build a sort of fortification or a sort of embankment in the middle of the river during a fight from which they could battle the enemy. You find there are cases where the Assamese have actually managed to build a structure in the middle of the river where they have put up bamboo poles in the Brahmaputra and put a platform on top from where they would fire on the Mughals. There are also cases where the Assamese build a kind of bridge of boats from one point to other, which would then blockade an incoming Mughal boat. Also, the kind of wood that the Assamese, that the Ahoms used for their boats was of a very special kind, and it was able to carry a lot of weight. And as a result, even the boats were small, they were able to carry a lot of weight and guns and men when they went to fight against the Mughals. So this Battle of Saraighat took place in March 1671. It was essentially a battle of those 40 large Mughal ships against the smaller boats of Lachit Borphukan. And by clever use of the terrain, by clever use of strategy and of navigation knowledge, Lachit Borphukan was able to defeat a much larger Mughal army. Mughal warboats were more correct for using, more for the coastal warfare, and not really fitted for fighting on the river. You can see this is the modern day bridge of Saraighat, where the Assamese have built a bridge at the narrowest point. This is more or less the point where the battle took place many years ago in 1671, and was the place where the Mughals were defeated soundly by the Assamese. Now, after facing defeat in this battle, the Mughals returned and Ram Singh accepted defeat. He went back to Dhaka and from there it progressed back to Agra. What you see on the screen here is a Sanskrit inscription which is found in Assam, and it actually commemorates Lachit Barphukan's victory over the Mughals in 1667, for the first time it took Guwahati. And so there is a stone inscription where the original has been kept in the museum and a replica has been put up outside the temple of Sukreshwar in Guwahati. So I would like to conclude my talk here regarding the Battle of Saraighat and Lachit Barphukan. I have also written a book called Brahmaputra on the brave Assamese general, who was contemporary Chhatrapati Shivaji. I hope you like my talk, and I believe I should now open this for any questions.
Hi Anish, a small question, like I haven't been to Assam yet. So like if I talk about Lachit, so how much, remain of Lachit there in the culture and what in the education and all that stuff? So this is my basic question.
Right. So Lachit Barphukan is a very popular name in Assam. And just about every Assamese person you meet will know at least something about him. I mean, it is very similar to Chhatrapati Shivaji in Maharashtra. So right from, rickshaw drivers to teachers to anyone I met, he was very happy when I went to Assam and told them that I'm working on a book on Lachit Barphukan. So general knowledge is definitely there. Plus you'll find a lot of places are named after Lachit Barphukan, such as this Lachitgarh High School. Plus, they have set up statues, they have set up memorials at various places. And one good thing is that a lot of places associated with Lachit Barphukan and his life are actually situated all around the modern city of Guwahati. So you don't really have to travel very far if you want to catch up on bits and pieces of his life. Right? For example, this fort of Itakuli, where he defeated the Mughal Faujdar, it is today situated right middle of Guwahati. And in fact, at that place there is today a temple of Sukreshwar, where they have put up a plaque commemorating the Battle of Saraighat and also a replica of the stone where it is written regarding how Lachit Barphukan fought against the Mughals. So yes, definitely in Assam he is a very well-known name.
Hello Anish, thank you so much. I had two questions. One was there any psychological warfare element in the Battle of Saraighat? And the second one is, what happened exactly after the Battle of Saraighat? And that's it. Thank you.
Yes, there was one there is definitely a psychological element in the Battle of Saraighat. One thing is that this battle took place almost immediately after the Assamese faced a defeat at a plain called Alaboy near Guwahati. So in 1670, winter of 1670, the Assamese had faced defeat where about 15,000 soldiers had got killed. And seeing this defeat, Aurangzeb had sent a much larger reinforcement to Ram Singh because he knew that the Assamese would be demoralized after facing such a huge defeat at the hands of Ram Singh. At the same time, Lachit Barphukan had fallen ill. He was not able to come to the battlefield. And so Ram Singh also thought that this is the opportune time to attack the Ahoms because they do not have the leader on the battlefield. Plus, they are having this memory of 15,000 soldiers getting killed in a single day a few months ago. So, yes, the Mughals did believe that this was the correct time to invade. And second question, to repeat, please. Could you please repeat the second question?
Unmute me. Yeah. So the second question was, what happened after the Battle of Saraighat?
Yeah.
And how did Lachit Barphukan carry his life forward? Thank you.
So, this Battle of Saraighat happened in March 1671. After which Ram Singh retreated first to a place called Rangmati, which is on the border of Bengal and Assam. And after that, he came back all the way to Dhaka and was called back north. So that period of Mughal and Assamese hostilities ended at that point of time. Lachit Borphukan died the next year, and with him, this great saga came to an end. A few years later, the Mughals attacked once more, and although the Assamese were in a position to defend, again there had some internal problems, and the fort of Itakuri, the Guwahati, was given up to the Mughals. But a year later, again the Mughals returned that fort to the Ahoms. And from that point on, from 1682, there were no other conflicts between the Assamese and the Mughals.
Anish, Aditya here. Wonderful talk.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know that, was there any correspondence between Shivaji Maharaj and Lachit, or since they had a common enemy? So was there any correspondence during that time?
There was no direct correspondence between Chhatrapati Shivaji and Lachit Borphukan. What we do find is that there is correspondence between the Raja of Cooch Behar and the Assamese king regarding Chhatrapati Shivaji. So before this before the second Mughal invasion, we find that the Raja of Cooch Behar sends a letter to the Assamese king saying that there is a person called Shivaji in the Deccan who is fighting against the Mughals, who are our common enemy, and this Chhatrapati Shivaji has managed to defeat the Mughals in various battles. He has managed to push back the Mughals 20-30 miles, and in fact we should now be similarly inspired to fight against them. So this is the kind of correspondence that takes place, where the Assamese know what is happening in the Deccan and the events that are taking place, as to how the Mughals are facing discomfiture or discomfort at the hands of the Marathas. There is a second example where the Assamese Prime Minister, the Ahom Prime Minister named Atang Buragoen, he sends a letter to Shaista Khan where he mentions that just like in the Deccan your thumb was cut, if you come over here your head will be cut. So this is the kind of letter that happens between Atang Buragoen and Shaista Khan. These are the two cases you find where the Assamese were aware of what's happening in the Deccan, but at the same time there was no direct correspondence between the two.
Thank you so much for a wonderful talk and a good research, I must say. So I just want to know that since we know that they were so, expert in this warfare, like Navy warfare. So is India using some of their techniques now also?
Difficult to say. In fact, some of the conditions are the same. I mean, the kind the same. In fact, they are even more acute nowadays because of the, yes, some of those tactics are being used because the kind of navigational challenges that were faced are there even today, and in fact they are assumed in even more acute form. When you're dealing with those smaller ships, then like I mentioned, these problems of the size of the boat or interaction between because of the pressure differences. Now, when you're dealing with much larger ships today, these problems are much more acute. And so definitely, yes, you'll find that even today, ships are designed and maneuvered in a way so as problems which were faced by them 400 years ago are again being faced and overcome by today's modern ships.
Hi Anish, thank you for this wonderful information. I have two questions. So पहला क्वेश्चन ये है कि अहोम डायनेस्टी का कोई भी अभी मतलब जनरेशन के हिसाब से कोई अभी जिंदा है, एंड सेकंड क्वेश्चन इज कि रेशियो ऑफ द बोथ द मिलिट्रीज क्या थे, मतलब कितने जन ये अहोम में थे और कितने जन मुगल के सामने थे?
So basically the Ahom dynasty existed right up to 1826. Okay. In 1826, before that, of course, the last two kings of the Ahom dynasty were puppets under the Burmese rulers, because Burma managed to attack Assam in the 19th century. And the last one or two Assamese or Ahom kings were actually puppet rulers under Burma. Then the British came, they attacked Burma, and they annexed Assam to Bengal. And then from 1826 onwards, obviously, after the Treaty of Yandabo, they found that the Assamese were no longer there as a dynasty and it was British rule. There was one attempt in 1857 in connection with the First War of Independence, where a person named Maniram Devan actually tried to put the then Assamese king back on the throne at Guwahati. In fact, he sent letters to Nana Sahib Peshwa also. But again, this idea was foiled because the British managed to capture it, and more or less the dynasty came to an end from that point on. And the second question, yes. So the Mughals actually sent a very large army, which came to around 80,000, 90,000 soldiers. And the Assamese army was also large, though not that large. Maybe they're about 10 or 20,000 short of this number. The Assamese had a very unique recruitment policy in place, in which they had a pike system. Under this pike system, if you had a family had 3 able-bodied men, one of them were definitely going to go fight in the army, and the other 2 or 3, whatever number is, they're going to sit at home and cultivate their farm and do other stuff. When war happened, the king had within his rights to ask as many number of people to go and fight as possible. So the Assamese were able to, in a place which was basically not a very high population area, they were able to by conscription raise large number of forces in very short span of time.
Myself, Dhruvajyoti Buragohai, I'm speaking from Assam.
Thank you.
Thank you for your conversation. And sir, actually, I'm also Ahom dynasty. I'm from the Ahom dynasty and grandson of Aton Buragohai, which we have talked earlier. Actually, we are very proud of Lassit Borphukan. Actually, I would like to buy your book about Saraighat Jud, or else where can I buy it?
Right. So thank you very much once again. And yes, the book is available on Amazon. Yes, but right now, as you know, thanks to the lockdown, nothing is getting shipped. So as soon as the lockdown lifts, definitely go to Amazon and you can see the book there.